And, to Julia, you've always been our little draft copy, haven't you? A bit messy. My father's voice boomed through the microphone, cutting through the applause for my sister. He held up a thick manila envelope for the entire ballroom to see. So I have a gift for you too. This is an invoice for $215,400. Every dollar I wasted raising you for 27 years. Consider this your severance package. You're fired from this family. The crowd laughed. 500 of Manhattan's elite, chuckling as if my life was a punchline. I didn't cry. I didn't run. I just sat there, my hand sliding into my purse until my fingers closed around the cold metal of a USB drive. They thought this was the end of me. They didn't know I was holding the evidence that would end them. Before I show you what was on that drive, tell me in the comments, have you ever been the one paying the price for someone else's perfection? Where are you watching from right now? The applause in the ballroom was deafening. My father hugged Isabella on stage, wiping a tear from his eye as if he were the picture of paternal devotion. From my seat in the shadows, I watched them, feeling the familiar burn of injustice in my throat. This wasn't new. This was just the most expensive version of the game we had been playing my entire life. You see, in the Whitford family, roles were assigned at birth. Isabella was the star, the golden child, the reflection of everything my parents wanted to be. And me? I was the garbage bin. I was the place they dumped their anxiety, their failures, and their ugly truths so they could keep their hands clean. I'm Julia, 27 years old, and for the last 5 years, I have worked as a freelance archivist. It's a fitting job for someone like me. I spend my days organizing history, digging through boxes of forgotten documents, and finding the truth buried under layers of dust. I know how to spot a missing page. I know how to see what has been removed. And sitting there at that gala, looking at the photoshopped family history on the screen, I realized I had been archiving my own abuse for decades without even knowing it. The invoice on the table in front of me was just the physical proof of a debt I had been paying since I was a child. I remembered the summer I turned 19. I was working 3 jobs: barista in the morning, library clerk in the afternoon, and stocking shelves at night just to pay for my community college tuition. My father had told me there was no money for my education. He said the markets were down, that things were tight, that I needed to learn the value of hard work. I believed him. I ate ramen and walked 4 miles to work because I couldn't afford the bus. But 2 weeks into that semester, Gary bought Isabella a $15,000 horse. A horse. She rode it exactly twice before she got bored and went back to her friends. When I asked him about it, trembling with exhaustion and rage, he just shrugged. He said Isabella had a gift, and gifts needed to be nurtured. He said I was jealous. He said I was petty. It wasn't just the money. It was the blame. When Isabella crashed her first car at 16, Gary told the police I had distracted her, even though I was in school across town. When my mother, Cynthia, lost her temper and threw a crystal vase at the wall, she told the neighbors I had knocked it over in a clumsy fit. I spent my childhood apologizing for things I didn't do, absorbing their shame so they could maintain their perfect, polished veneer. For years, I wondered what was wrong with me. Why wasn't I enough? Why was I the draft copy? But staring at my father on that stage, watching him bask in the adoration of 500 strangers, the truth finally clicked into place. They don't hate me because I'm bad. They hate me because they need a vessel for their sins. If I am the failure, then Isabella can be the success. If I am the messy one, they can be the perfect ones. I am the necessary sacrifice for their ego. They need me to stay down so they can stand tall. Back then, that realization would have broken me. I would have cried in the bathroom and begged for forgiveness. But tonight, touching the cool plastic of the USB drive in my purse, I didn't feel broken. I felt dangerous. They thought the invoice was a joke, a final humiliation to push me out the door. They didn't realize they had just handed me the moral license to burn their house down. Isabella raised her glass on stage, laughing as the light caught the diamonds on her wrist. She looked at me, just for a second, and smirked. It was the same look she gave me when she got the horse. It was the look of someone who believes they are untouchable. Enjoy it, Izzy. Because you're drinking champagne on a sinking ship. I pushed my chair back. The metal legs scraped against the marble floor. A harsh, ugly sound that nobody heard over the applause. My father was still beaming on stage, accepting a hug from Isabella, while my mother dabbed at dry eyes with a silk handkerchief. They were the picture of a perfect family. I was just the smudge on the lens they had finally wiped clean. I grabbed my purse. I left the invoice on the table. I didn't need the paper to remember the number. $215,400. That number was burned into my retinas. It was the price tag of my existence. I walked toward the service exit, my heels clicking a fast, angry rhythm. I needed air. I needed to scream. But mostly, I needed to figure out how to survive. I had $40 in my bank account and a USB drive that I prayed contained something useful. I didn't know what was on it yet. I only knew that 3 months ago, right before Grandma Veronica died, she had pressed it into my hand and whispered, "Wait until they show you their teeth." Well, Grandma, they just showed them. And they are sharper than I thought. I burst into the quiet hallway outside the ballroom. The muffled thumping of the bass faded behind me. I leaned against the cool plaster wall, trying to steady my breathing. I closed my eyes, counting to 10, telling myself not to break down. Not here. Not where they could see me. You must be the draft copy. The voice was gravel and smoke. I snapped my eyes open. A man was standing in the alcove near the coat check. He was older, maybe 60, wearing a suit that cost more than my entire education. He wasn't a guest. He didn't have that glazed, party-goer look. He looked like a shark waiting for the water to churn. "Excuse me?" I said, straightening up. "Your father," the man said, stepping into the light. "He called you a draft copy. Charming man. I can see where Isabella gets her warmth." I gripped my purse tighter. "If you're a reporter?" "I have nothing to say. I'm not a reporter, Julia. My name is Russell. I'm the reason your grandmother didn't change her will." My stomach dropped. Grandma didn't have a will. Dad said she died intestate. That's why he got everything. Russell smiled, but there was no humor in it. It was a cold, predatory baring of teeth. "Your father says a lot of things. He said she died of natural causes, too. A stroke in her sleep. Peaceful. Dignified." He took a step closer. The air in the hallway seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Is that what he told you?" "Yes," I whispered. Russell reached into his jacket pocket. He didn't pull out a card or a handshake. He pulled out an iPad, encased in heavy-duty rubber. "Veronica hired me 6 months ago," he said. "She knew Gary was pressuring her for the house. She knew he was desperate. She wanted me to install cameras in her room at the nursing home. Hidden ones, audio and video." He held the device out to me. The screen was black, reflecting my own pale, terrified face. "She didn't die of a stroke, Julia. And she didn't leave your father a dime. She left him a trap." I stared at the iPad. My hands were shaking so hard I wasn't sure I could hold it. "What is this?" I asked. "The receipts," Russell said softly. "You wanted to know why you were the scapegoat? You wanted to know why they tried to erase you tonight? It's because you're the only one who wouldn't do what I'm about to show you." He pressed the device into my hands. "Watch it. And then tell me if you still want to leave quietly." I pressed play. The screen flickered to life, showing a timestamp from 3 months ago. February 12th, 8:43 p.m. The angle was high, looking down from a smoke detector or a vent. It showed a sterile room at the Pinecrest nursing facility. My grandmother, Veronica, lay in the bed, looking smaller than I remembered. The steady, rhythmic beeping of her heart monitor was the only sound in the hallway alcove where I stood. Then, the door in the video opened. My father walked in. He didn't take off his coat. He didn't sit in the chair by her bedside to hold her hand. He paced. He looked like a caged animal, agitated and sweating. The audio was crisp. Russell really knew his craft. "I need the signature, Mom," Gary snapped. "The bridge loan is due on Monday. If I don't have that house as collateral, they're going to liquidate everything." Grandma shook her head. She was weak, her hand trembling as she reached for her water glass. "No," she rasped. Her voice was thin, like dry leaves. "It's for Julia. You'll just gamble it away on another bad deal." "Julia?" Gary laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "Julia is a secretary. She doesn't need a $13 million brownstone. She needs a reality check. I built this family. I deserve the asset." "You built nothing," Grandma whispered. That was the moment he snapped. On the screen, my father, the man who had just charmed 500 people in the ballroom, lunged at the bed. He didn't hit her. He grabbed her hand. Her right hand. The one she used to write me birthday cards. The one that was swollen with arthritis? I gasped, covering my mouth with my hand to stifle the sound. He shoved a pen between her fingers and slammed a document onto the tray table. "Sign it!" he screamed. "Sign it, you old witch. Or I swear to God I'll leave you here to rot." She tried to pull away. He twisted her wrist. I watched, horrified, as he bent her fingers back. The leverage was cruel. Calculated. "Sign it!" She cried out, a sharp, pained yelp that tore through my heart. Under the pressure, her hands spasmed, dragging the pen across the paper in a jagged line. "There," he hissed. He snatched the paper away. Then he did something unforgivable. He shoved her back against the pillows hard enough that her oxygen mask slipped sideways. He didn't fix it. He turned around, folded the paper into his pocket, and walked out. The video continued for another minute. Just my grandmother, alone, sobbing quietly, clutching her bruised hand to her chest as the heart monitor began to speed up. I paused the video. The screen went black, reflecting my face. I wasn't crying anymore. The tears had evaporated, replaced by a cold, white-hot fury that settled in the marrow of my bones. For years, I had thought my father was just a narcissist. I thought he was selfish, status-obsessed, maybe a little mean. But I didn't know he was a monster. He hadn't just stolen my inheritance. He had tortured a dying woman to get it. The gift he had just given Isabella on stage, the house, the legacy it was, blood money. Every brick of that brownstone was paid for with my grandmother's pain. I looked down at the invoice he had handed me. $215,000. He wanted me to pay him for raising me? Fine, Dad. Let's settle the account. I looked at Russell. He was watching me, his expression unreadable. He didn't need to ask if I was ready. He could see it in my eyes. The draft copy was gone. The scared little girl who sat in the back row was gone. Do you have the cable? I asked. My voice didn't shake. Russell reached into his other pocket and pulled out an HDMI adapter. The AV booth is unlocked. I bribed the guard 10 minutes ago. I took the cable. I looked at the iPad one last time. At the freeze frame of my father's back as he walked away from his mother. He thought he got away with it. He thought he owned the room. The night. The narrative. I texted Russell 3 words. Burn it down. Then I turned and walked back toward the ballroom doors. I wasn't walking into a party anymore. I was walking into a war zone. And I was the only one with a weapon. The ballroom was louder than I remembered. The bass from the orchestra thrummed against my ribs as I pushed through the heavy double doors. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of lilies and expensive perfume. A suffocating sweetness that masked the rot underneath. I moved through the shadows of the room, sticking to the perimeter. Nobody looked at me. Why would they? I was the draft copy. I was the mistake that had been erased. To them, I had already left the building, fleeing in shame with my severance invoice tucked under my arm. On stage, my family was putting on the performance of a lifetime. Gary stood at the podium, a glass of champagne raised high. He looked invincible. The stage lights caught the sweat on his forehead, making him glow like a minor deity. Isabella stood next to him, clutching the giant ceremonial key to the Hamptons estate like a scepter. She was laughing at something he said, her head thrown back, exposing the long, elegant line of her throat. They looked safe. That was the thing that struck me most. They looked completely, arrogantly safe. They believed they had won. They believed that by humiliating me, they had secured their legacy. I stopped near a pillar, just 10 feet from the audiovisual booth. To Isabella, Gary's voice boomed over the speakers. The daughter who actually listens. The daughter who knows that loyalty is rewarded. He paused, scanning the room for effect. And let's be honest, folks. It's a relief to finally have the family portrait look the way it was always supposed to. No more cropping required. The crowd chuckled. A few people glanced at my empty table, shaking their heads. Good, I thought. Keep laughing. It makes the silence that's coming so much sweeter. I slipped past the last table and approached the AV booth. It was a small, cordoned-off area raised slightly above the floor, manned by a bored-looking technician in a black headset. He was scrolling on his phone, ignoring the speeches. I stepped up onto the riser. He looked up, startled. Hey, private area, he said, pulling one earphone off. Guests aren't allowed back here. I'm not a guest, I said, my voice steady. I'm the sister. Isabella's sister. I reached into my purse. I didn't have the kind of money my father burned through casually. I had my rent money, $400 in cash. Everything I had until my next freelance payment cleared. I folded the bills and placed them on the mixing board beside the technician's hand. Dad wants a surprise for Izzy, I lied. A video tribute. He wants it played now, before the cake. The tech glanced at the cash, then at me, the dress, the resemblance to the woman on stage, the resolve. He shrugged. This wasn't his problem. HDMI's there, he said, pocketing the money. 2 minutes before the band starts. 2 minutes is enough. My hands were steady as I unplugged the console and connected the iPad. On the screen, February 12th, 8:43 p.m. Behind my father, the Pierre Hotel logo glowed gold. He was mid-toast. This house represents integrity, Gary declared. The Whitford legacy. We take care of our own. I unlocked the iPad. You're right, Dad. You take care of them until they're empty. Then you break them. I tapped the screen. The logo vanished. A grainy video filled the wall. The audio hit first raw, vicious. Sign it or I'll break it. The room went dead silent. 500 heads turned as my father froze, his own voice echoing back at him. On screen, he gripped my grandmother's hand. You could see the terror in her eyes. You could hear the sickening pop as he forced the pen. Please, it hurts. I don't care. Sign it. Gary dropped his glass. Isabella's ceremonial key clattered to the stage. My mother didn't look at the screen, she scanned the crowd, calculating damage control that no longer existed. The video ended on my father storming out, leaving his dying mother shaking in bed. 3 seconds of absolute silence. Then Gary screamed. It's fake. A deep fake. Turn it off. He scrambled for the microphone. This is a prank by my unstable sister. The deed is signed. The house is mine. I stepped into the light, microphone in hand. Actually, Dad, it isn't. He spun toward me. Furious. You didn't read what you forced her to sign, I said calmly. You were too busy breaking her fingers. I tapped the screen. The document zoomed in. It's not a deed, I said. It's the cafeteria lunch menu. She signed for tapioca pudding. The room gasped. The house, the Hamptons estate, the portfolio Grandma put them into an irrevocable trust 5 years ago. I'm the sole trustee. She knew you'd come for it. I met his eyes. He looked hollow. You assaulted your dying mother for a piece of scrap paper. I'm the patriarch, he whispered. You're a tenant, I replied. You've spent your life renting status, renting identity. And your lease just expired. The ballroom doors burst open. 6 NYPD officers entered. Gary Whitford, you're under arrest for elder abuse, assault, and attempted fraud. They cuffed him beneath the frozen image of his crime. My mother grabbed my arm. Hysterical. Where will we live? We're family. I removed her hand. You have the Tesla, I said, looking at Isabella. Sleep in it. I dropped the microphone and walked out into the New York night without looking back. The fallout was immediate. Gary was denied bail. The video was undeniable. My mother and sister were evicted days later. The Tesla was repossessed. Appearances had been financed on debt. As for me, I'm sitting in the brownstone library now, drinking tea from Grandma's cup. The house is quiet. The air is clean. I am the trustee. I am the owner. I am the one who remembers. They tried to erase me for 27 years. Instead, they cleared the page.